2 Chronicles chapter 29. Hezekiah does right. Hizkiyahu was 25 years old when he began his reign, and he ruled for 29 years in Jerusalem. His mother's name was Aviah, the daughter of Zahariah. He did what was right from Adonai's perspective, following the example of everything David his ancestor had done. Sanctifying the house of God. In the first month of the first year of his reign, he reopened the doors of the house of Adonai and repaired them. Then he brought in the Kohanim and Levim, assembled them in the open space to the east, and said to them, "Listen to me, Levim, consecrate yourselves now, consecrate the house of Adonai the God of your ancestors, and remove the filth from the holy place. For our ancestors acted treacherously, they did what is evil from the perspective of Adonai our God, they abandoned him, they turned their faces away from where Adonai lives and turned their backs on him. They sealed the doors of the vestibule, put out the lamps and stopped burning incense and offering burnt offerings in the holy place to the God of Israel. Because of this, Adonai's anger has settled on Yehudah and Jerusalem, and he has made them an object of horror, astonishment and mocking, as you can see with your own eyes. Here, our ancestors have fallen by the sword, and on this account our sons, daughters and wives have gone into captivity. Now it is in my heart to make a covenant with Adonai the God of Israel, so that his furious anger will turn away from us. My sons, now is not a time for being negligent, for you are the ones Adonai chose to stand before him and serve him as his ministers, offering him incense." Then the Levim set about the task, Machat the son of Amasai and Yoel the son of Azariahu from the descendants of the Kahati, of the sons of Merari, Kish the son of Avdi and Azariahu the son of Yahalalel, of the Gershuni, Joash the son of Zima and Eden the son of Joash. Of the descendants of Elitzaphan, Shimri and Yael, of the descendants of Asaph, Zahariahu and Mattaniahu. Of the descendants of Heman, Yechiel and Shimi, and of the descendants of Widutan, Shmaliah and Uziel. They gathered their kinsmen, consecrated themselves and, in keeping with the king's order and Adonai's words, went in to cleanse the house of Adonai. The Kohanim went in to cleanse the inner part of the house of Adonai. All the unclean things they found in the sanctuary of Adonai they brought out into the courtyard of the house of Adonai, where the Levim took and carried them out to Vadi Kidron. They began consecrating on the first day of the first month, and on the 8th day of the month they reached the vestibule of Adonai. Then they consecrated the house of Adonai in 8 more days, so that on the 16th day of the first month they had finished. Then they went to Hizkiyahu the king in the palace, and said, "We have cleansed all the house of Adonai, including the altar for burnt offerings, with all its equipment, and the table for the showbread, with all its equipment. Moreover, we have reconditioned and consecrated all the articles that King Achaz threw out during his reign, when he was sinning, and they are there, in front of the altar of Adonai." The restoration of temple worship. Next morning, Hizkiyahu the king got up early, gathered the leading men of the city and went up to the house of Adonai. They brought 7 bulls, 7 rams, 7 lambs and 7 male goats as a sin offering for the kingdom, for the sanctuary and for Yehudah. And he ordered the Kohanim to offer them on the altar of Adonai. After slaughtering the bulls, the Kohanim took the blood and splashed it against the altar. Next, they slaughtered the rams and splashed the blood against the altar, and also slaughtered the lambs and splashed the blood against the altar. After bringing the male goats for the sin offering close to the king and the assembly and laying their hands on them, The Kohanim slaughtered them and made a sin offering with their blood on the altar to make atonement for all Israel. For the king had ordered that the burnt offering and the sin offering should be for all Israel. He stationed the Leviim in the house of Adonai with cymbals, lyres and lutes, in keeping with the order of David, Gad the king's seer and Nathan the prophet. For the mitzvah had come from Adonai through his prophets. The Leviim stood with the instruments of David and the Kohanim with the trumpets. Hizkiyahu ordered that the burnt offering should be offered on the altar. The moment the burnt offering began, the song of Adonai also began, accompanied by the trumpets and the instruments of David king of Israel. The whole assembly prostrated themselves, the singers sang, and the trumpeters sounded. All this continued until the burnt offering was finished. When the offering was over, the king and everyone present with him bowed down and prostrated themselves. Then Hizkiyahu the king and the leaders ordered the Leviim to sing praises to Adonai, using the words of David and of Asaph the seer. They sang praises until they were filled with joy, and they bowed their heads and prostrated themselves. Hizkiyahu responded by saying, "Now that you have consecrated yourselves to Adonai, come close, and bring sacrifices and thank offerings into the house of Adonai." So the community brought in sacrifices and thank offerings, and as many as were willing volunteered burnt offerings. In all, the burnt offerings brought by the congregation totaled 70 bulls, 100 rams and 200 lambs. All these were for a burnt offering to Adonai. The consecrated gifts amounted to 600 oxen and 3,000 sheep. Only there weren't enough Kohanim to skin and butcher all the burnt offerings, so their colleagues the Leviim assisted them until the work was finished and the Kohanim had consecrated themselves. For the Leviim had been more diligent to consecrate themselves than the Kohanim. Besides the abundance of burnt offerings, there was the fat of the peace offerings and drink offerings for each burnt offering. Thus the service of the house of Adonai was restored. Hizkiyahu and all the people rejoiced over what God had prepared for the people, since it had all happened so suddenly.